and the will to stand up for what's right. Your gift of Point of View enables us to reach more people with the information and free resources they need to join you in making a real difference in our homes, at work, in our churches, and our communities. Some of our friends have put $55,000 on the table as a matching challenge. You give, they will match it. Make a difference today by visiting pointofview.net/difference or call 1-800-347-5151. Double your impact today. Make a difference by taking this first step. Pointofview.net/difference and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, your guest host for Point of View.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm Merrill Matthews with the Institute for Policy Innovation, sitting in for Kirby today. And on the phone with me is Bodie Hodge. He is with the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter in Kentucky. And we're talking about that fabulous ark that is in there in Kentucky that looks awful like something like came out of Genesis. Bodie, so how, if we got all these animals on the ark, how are they going to be able to feed them?
Yeah, well, actually, it wasn't as difficult as people might think, and that's one of the common questions that people ask when they go on board the Ark. They get an opportunity to see how you can have automatic feeding systems and automatic watering systems. People do that today, and some of the larger farms that hold a lot of different animals and so forth. Noah, he'd had plenty of time to think through these things. They probably stored and planned and prepped and all that. The Bible told him to take food on board the Ark for them and for the animals, so they should have been prepared for a lot of that stuff, even being able to take care of a lot of the waste, too, with some automatic systems.
Well, in your pocketbook on Noah's Ark, you mentioned the search for the real Ark. What's the status of the search for the real Ark these days? I'm guessing 5-6 years ago, I went to a movie special showing in one of the theaters about the search for the Ark. They didn't find it in that one, but I have occasionally heard people say, well, we saw in the ice up there this big dark-looking thing, looked like it might be a boat, but nobody's actually found it yet, have they?
No, otherwise they wouldn't be asking the question. That'd probably be the biggest find ever in history, when it comes down to it. There's a lot of people who claim to have seen different things at different places. But, if you actually look at a lot of historical research, a lot of people are actually pointing at a different mountain than what we call Mount Ararat today. What we call Mount Ararat today is a gigantic volcano, and its last eruption was in the 1830s. So, we have to be very careful about saying, it was on Mount Ararat, because the Bible actually doesn't say that. It says in the mountains of Ararat, which is a range. So it could be in a lot of different places. It could have burned up. It could have just totally disintegrated over, about 4,350 years now. But at this stage, a lot of historical accounts actually point to another mountain that used to be known as Mount Ararat down in that area. So there is a lot of debate over that. Ken Ham and myself, we actually put together a book called A Flood of Evidence that looks at a lot of the questions people ask about Noah's Ark as well as about the flood. How did you care for the animals and so forth? One of the questions in there is on the search for Noah's Ark. But again, that book is called A Flood of Evidence that Ken and I put together on that. You
mentioned the time frame there. So we actually have, if we take the biblical time frame, we actually have a pretty good idea of when the ark might have been floated. Go through that for us.
Yeah, we can run through that. Really, all throughout the Old Testament, it gives you all sorts of dates and reigns, and a lot of times genealogies. We're given a lot of genealogical data. From creation forward, Adam was created on the sixth day, for example. We know he lived 930 years. So there's a lot of things we can actually tally up. The flood, when you put those numbers together, was about 1656 A.M. That's basically from creation forward. So about 1656 years after creation is when that occurred, and that was about 2248 B.C., as I recall, according to a number of different chronologists. Of course, chronologists vary a little bit on some of these numbers, but we're right in the ballpark there. So about 4,350 years ago, about the time that the flood would have occurred.
And I've actually looked at those numbers at times past, and some of the close descendants, either the sons of Noah or the grandsons of Noah, would have still been around when, say, for instance, Abraham was there, I think.
That's exactly right. Shem, which is Noah's son, he lived 600 years after the flood. His life actually would have crossed over with Abraham's. Now, if you look carefully in there, you have a lot of descendants whose ages were really dropping off, particularly after the Tower of Babel. Noah still lived 350 years after the flood. He lived about 950 years all total. And if you think about that, Noah outlived his great-great-great-great-great-grandson. Oh, boy, I'm trying to remember which one it is. I know he outlived Peleg for sure, but I think Shem outlived Terah, which is Abraham's father as well, even throughout his life. So, I mean, some of these guys were living a long time, but that actually is very important because it explains why people started to worship certain ancestors, whether it was Greek mythology or Germanic mythology or Egyptian mythology or even Shinto of Japan. People were worshiping their ancestors, and if you look carefully at a lot of these old accounts, their ancestors that they called gods or immortals, they outlived everyone else, but they still died. Now, that actually makes sense in light of what happened after the flood with some of those age declines.
And you find some of those names that are descendants that actually become apparently gods to later generations. Asher, I think, was one, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We find that with quite a few of these, whether it's Germanic, Roman, or Greek or whatnot. A lot of those names, you may not realize that Pluto are actually variant names of some of the people that came out of the Tower of Babel.
And it would be, I've looked at that in the past, not done a major study on it, but I thought if you were trying to just sort of create this out of whole cloth, you couldn't be that precise on so many different things that you would say, well, we know there are descendants, Ashurbanipal. Those are from the area called Asher, and Asher became a god among them. In fact, one of the magazines I take is Archaeology, and they had a story in there about a year ago on Asher and the descendants, but they never connected it to the Noah flood.
Right.
They just have Asher out there and how this becomes a major god for them.
Yeah, I mean, we have quite a few of them. I have a book called The Tower of Babel where I look at a lot of these people and these connections, and I'm looking at the ancestor worship and some of these names of different people throughout here. But some of the names of Noah's sons and grandsons still exist even today. We sometimes don't realize that the Hebrew name for Egypt is Mitzrayim.
Right.
That's one of Noah's grandsons. The Hebrew name for Greece is Javan. That's one of Noah's grandsons. Even one of Noah's great-grandsons, Ashkenaz, that's actually the ancient name for Germany, and we still see a reflection of that name in Scandinavia or Saxon. So we still see those names there. Even a lot of the Jews that lived in the land of Germany were known as the Ashkenazi Jews living in the land of Ashkenaz. So we see so many of those all around the world. And, I like to put a lot of that together, and that's in the book that I did called The Tower of Babel. It's actually one of my more popular books.
Okay.
On the Tower of Babel.
Good. If I end up coming over to the Ark here soon, how long am I going to spend looking in the Ark there? What's the time frame for me to go through the Ark?
Oh boy, that's tough to say. If you try to go through it quickly, you're talking 2.5, 3 hours. But that you're probably not reading the signs, probably not watching all the videos and learning from everything. You're probably just scooting through. But you could easily spend probably a day or two inside the Ark itself, reading all the signs and going through everything. Just trying to absorb it.
And the Creation Museum, if I'm coming and I want to sort of do both of these things, what kind of time frame we're looking at?
Here's what I would suggest as a minimum. I would suggest 1 day at each attraction. That's at a minimum, because you could spend a whole day here at the Creation Museum. We have a petting zoo and gardens outside. There's so much to do. The planetarium, like I said, and we got 3D shows and stuff like that. So you could do all that. Now, let me tell you, we've got a special this year at the Ark Encounter and at the Creation Museum. For a paying adult, for even one paying adult, any kids 10 and under get in free. So it's an amazing deal that's going to last through 2021. For at least one paying adult, all the kids 10 and under get in free.
It's a great deal and a great way for people to get out for this summer. When we come back, I want to talk about something you hinted at here just a minute ago, which was lifespans declined significantly after the Ark, and I want to get your thinking about why that was the case, and if the flood had something to do with it, if the clouds or whatever had something to do with it. My guest for this hour is Bodie Hodge. He is with the Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum. He is a speaker and writer for Answers in Genesis. And if you want to find out more about the Ark Encounter, we have those links on our website, Ark Encounter, at pointofview.net. We also have links to other material that they have sent. And I'd encourage you to go look at some of those and just take, I think the video I looked at last night was maybe 3 minutes or so, and you get an awful lot of information. You get a sense of how big this thing is, what a major project it was to undertake undertake this, how expensive it was to undertake something like that, and to maintain it this year. So I suspect they're looking for people to come and sort of fill in where the pandemic has created big holes in a lot of areas that do entertainment and information and educational and so forth. So I want you to stay with us. We're going to come back, and we want to find out why did ages begin to decline so quickly after the ark? And people have raised a number of speculations. I think Bodie probably has a good explanation for that, and we'll be looking for that explanation when we get back. If you want to call, 1-800-351-1212, 1-800-351-1212. Stay with us, and we'll be back.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And we're back on Point of View with my guest, Bodie Hodge from the Ark Encounter and Creation Museum in Kentucky. And Bodie, we've got some callers here, so let's take one. Let's go to Jan. Jan, you're on the air.
Hi, how are you?
Fine.
Huh? So we've been to the Ark, my husband and I have, and from Texas, we picked up my mom in Tennessee and drove up, and just, it's worth it. I mean, it is so magnificent, and you come up to it, and you're like way far away from it, and you're just like, okay, it's massive from back here, but then when you're up on it, it's just mind-boggling. It's just amazing, really.
Bodie?
Yeah, it really is. I remember the first time that I saw it fully built. It was my thoughts exactly. You see it from a distance, like that looks big, but then when you get up there, you're just like, wow, I can't believe this.
Thank you, Jan. And let's go to Nancy. Nancy, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Well, I am hot in El Paso. I mean, 108, 109. Oh, my goodness. But I will tell you that I was so excited to see the Ark. I really pushed. I told Miles, we will come from Nashville because we had come for our daughter's last event for her residency at Vanderbilt. And I said, we are going early. We will drive across Kentucky to go see it. Well, we got in, stayed overnight, came down 45 minutes down the freeway into Kentucky, and we took our turn, parked, big, nice barn, got our tickets, going, okay, where is this Ark? And we had to wait for the bus. And the fact that they are moderating the traffic, the walking traffic to going on a bus, it's exciting. And then you see it, and it's, oh, my gosh. And I spent 5 hours going, oh, my gosh, on that Ark alone. And I wanted to have my 3 kids with the 2 grandchildren meet us last year on my birthday in September. Well, forget that. That didn't work.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do it this year, and they're short on leave. So I said, but I was so excited, and it answers the questions you had when you were children, like, where did they put the birds? And where did they put the animals? And were the animals all roving around? No. And where's the water? And how did they get their food? The dynamics, the engineering, the fact that the Amish did a lot of the woodwork on the inside. I bought 2 or 3 books, and by putting my sticker on my car, people have asked me, what do you mean the Ark? Tell me about it. So I'm so glad I have the little sticker thing on my car. So people are going. It's excellent. Just excellent. Worth every single penny to go see it.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. That's just
That's
amazing.
quite a commendation.
We do. We get people from all over the country. There's people who sometimes just walk through the parking lot seeing the license plates that come from all over the country. And we get people from all over the world, actually, coming here. So it really is neat.
And let's go to Michael. Michael, you're on the air.
Well, hello. Good afternoon.
How are you, Michael?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, all right.
Have you been to the Ark, Michael?
Yes, indeed. My wife and I took her mother there, and it was an amazing expedition. I would say that the Ark rivals the finest museum displays you could point to and say, well, there's an example of how to produce this. As other callers have said, the size of it is mind-boggling. When you actually get out of the bus and walk up to it and you see the full size of it, the scope of it, and you think this is all constructed to the biblically specified dimensions, and you see this come to life, and you realize what an amazing project this was. And when you go inside and you wander the 3 floors and you see all, as the previous caller said, the ingenious ways that they dealt with housing the animals, and even the most mundane things, speculation as to how they might have gotten rid of waste or excess water that come in.
Things you don't think about.
No, just absolutely extraordinary and well worth the trip. We spent an entire day there, and I think virtually everyone we saw wandering the floors, their eyes were just locked on everything, and the attention was just paid to everything, and it's outstanding. It's well worth the trip.
Thank you so much, Michael, for those comments.
Yeah, and you know what? He hit on something there. We did. When we put this together, we wanted to do it top notch. We wanted this to rival the Disneys that are out there, the Universal Studios. We wanted this to be something that was high quality, from start to finish. And, hearing testimonies like that, it sounded like we nailed that.
It does. So tell me, we go back to the question I was going to ask, why am I not going to live 900 years?
You know what? I'm not either. But I think we'd probably both rather live in heaven forever with God than spend too much more time on this sin, cursed, and broken world. But, after the flood, we really did start to see some age declines. But I want somebody to notice, if you look carefully, just before the flood, we started to see some decline as well. Do you realize Noah's father, Lamech, only lived 777 years?
Oh, a child.
Only. But, that's 200 years less than his father, and about 150 years or so, or about 200, I guess, less than Noah as well. So there might have been some genetic issues going on there. Remember, Shem was born before the flood. He only lived 600 years. Now, there could be other factors. A lot of people think that it's genetic bottlenecks at the flood as well as at the Tower of Babel, because we saw some significant drops, as a result of that. If you go below Shem, there's 3 generations there where they were living on average about 400 to about 400 to 450 years old. And then all of a sudden after the events at the Tower of Babel, we see 3 generations where they were about 235 years or so. So we started to see some significant drops as a result of those occurrences. I know some people have thought maybe the diet, because, after the flood, man was first permitted to eat meat. But, we've seen people who are vegetarians most of their life, and they don't live 900 years old. Some people thought maybe there was increased oxygen in the atmosphere prior to that. Of course, increased oxygen, although it does have certain beneficial health aspects in certain instances, it also causes oxygen toxicity and, like blurred vision and all sorts of other problems. That's why we take antioxidants to kind of fight against increased oxygen. There may be other factors involved, environmental changes, but I would still suggest the main factor is probably genetic. But keep in mind, the Lord gave a comment here in Genesis 5:29. It says, "And he shall call his name Noah, saying, This one will comfort us concerning our work and toil of our hands because of the ground which the Lord had cursed." And if you realize, Noah strived for 950 years by the toil of his hands. We toil a lot less than that. So there might be some aspect of the name here of Noah and the prophecy about him that the ages would decline a little bit from that point. So there's a number of factors in there. I actually did a chapter on this in that book, The Tower of Babel, that I was mentioning, looking at these age declines. People can find out a little bit more if they wanted to look there.
My guest for this hour has been Bodie Hodge. He is with the Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum. You can go to pointofview.net, and we have information, the links to those on our website. I'd encourage you to do so. I'd also encourage you to download their pocketbook on Noah's Ark. I've been going through it. It's long, it's impressive, and it's filled with information. Thank you so much for joining us, Bodie.
Hey, it's always been great being on the show. I guess you guys are going to talk about the Discovery Center after this. Is this correct?
We are indeed. Another place for people to go now the pandemic is receding.
Yeah. If I can give a pre-shout out to that, I want to encourage people to go to that as well. That's done by some of our friends down at the Institute of Creation Research. So,
indeed.
Have a good time on that show talking about that.
Thank you. So when we come back, we're going to turn to the Institute for Creation Research, which is based here in Dallas, and they have got a phenomenal display there, and the Discovery Center is back open, and another source for you to be able to get out and start interacting in society again. Stay with us, and we'll be back on Point of View.
We live in a digital generation. Point of View is reaching this often overly plugged-in generation with truth. You can keep up with us 24 hours a day using your phone, your tablet, your laptop, or your desktop. Search for the Point of View Radio Talk Show on Facebook, where you can keep up with today's issues, learn about current and upcoming guests by liking us on Facebook. Also, follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @PointOfViewRTS. That stands for Point of View Radio Talk Show. Learn, interact, make a difference with Point of View using new media. And here's one way you can make a big difference. Help us increase our reach by spreading the word among your friends. Share a Facebook post. Tag us in a tweet. With enough joining us to plant seeds, we'll see a tremendous harvest. Come on, it only takes a minute. Search for Point of View Radio Talk Show on Facebook, @PointOfViewRTS on Twitter, and subscribe to the Point of View Radio Talk Show channel on YouTube. Learn, interact, share. The Point of View Radio Talk Show. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kirby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of View, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, your guest host for Point of View.
And welcome back to our second hour. I'm Merrill Matthews with the Institute for Policy Innovation, sitting in for Kirby Anderson today. And we started our first hour. I pointed out that the pandemic is receding, at least here in the U.S. It's summer, and Christians, like many other people, may want to get out and go places again. And so we are focusing today on a couple of good options for Christians to both get them out of the house, get them back into society, and also just encourage and learn more about their faith. So with first hour, we went to Bodie Hodge with the Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum in Kentucky, but not everybody can get to Kentucky. They may not be able to do that. So if you can get to Dallas, we're going to give you an option there. Our guest for this hour is Dr. Randy Guliuzza. He is president of the Institute for Creation Research, a ministry that researches and communicates how science confirms biblical creation. He has a BS in engineering from South Dakota School of Mines and Technology, a BA in theology from Moody Bible Institute, an MD from the University of Minnesota, and a Master of Public Health from Harvard University. He worked as a civil engineer. He was in the military for a while. He retired from the military in 2008 and ended up at the Institute for Creation Research Institute, where they made him president last year. Randy, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, Merrill, thank you very much for this invitation to talk about our Discovery Center and the exciting things you're doing and promoting this summer.
You know, I think about a year and a half or so ago, we had a couple of your scholars in to just go over a range of different issues about creation, the Bible, Adam, the Discovery Center, and so forth. And that turned out to be a very popular show. And of course, people have been locked down for a while now. And I think I saw a notice here, because I get emails from you, that the Discovery Center was opening back up here a little while back. And I thought, it's time to have you back on to talk about the Discovery Center, the Institute, what you're doing, and catch us up on those things, and then highlight some of the things that some of the options people have, and maybe we'll even take some questions about Adam, Eve, creation, and we just got through talking about Noah and the flood. So you're sort of a sister organization in dealing with some of those same issues.
Yes, that's right, and your timing was perfect because of COVID. We were closed for quite some time, but on the beginning of May, our Discovery Center reopened, and it's been really popular. We've had a lot of good traffic, a lot of people coming in to see it, and we have some big events coming up, like on the 4th of July, so we're very excited about the turnout there and what we'll be able to teach.
You know, I told Bodie that in the fall of 2019, my wife and I were talking, and I said, we need to get up to Kentucky to see that Ark. That is an amazing thing. And then the pandemic hit, so we stayed in. But I have been to the Discovery Center, and it is just a phenomenal place. So just give us a little history about the Institute for Creation Research, how you got started, when you got started, Dr. Morris, and just the sort of the background there.
Yes, we've actually just finished off our 50th anniversary. Can you believe that?
Amazing.
Many years. And actually, we started in San Diego, California, a little suburb outside of it called Santee, by Henry Morris, Jr., and he is very well known for being the co-author with John Wickham of the book The Genesis Flood, which was pretty much the start of what people would call the modern creationist movement. The value of that book is that it gave people a new way of looking at geology. It helped people understand why we have the layers that we have, why they're so flat, why they're so extensive, why they trap so many billions of fossils in them readily, why we have such huge coal deposits. And in other words, it took a lot of interesting geological phenomena, tied them all together in one cohesive theory, which means that these all were explained by the worldwide flood. It was very scientifically rigorous. It was biblically accurate. And that book was the launch of the creationist movement, and then about a decade later was the start of the Institute for Creation Research.
Well, I'm sure you get a lot of pushback today from the evolutionists, but I would think in Dr. Morris's, when he was starting that out, it would have been, people would have just rolled their eyes because no one had really stepped up and just sort of said, I defend the creation, and here's why scientifically it can happen.
You're right. In a way, it was kind of a mixed bag. Back then, it was so new and people hadn't thought about it very much that it was quite novel, and a lot of geologists, if they just didn't dismiss it out of hand, actually listened very carefully to some of the arguments that Dr. Morris made. And that was in the secular realm. And in the church, it was a different story than we find today. The church was just really, really hungry for answers. They wanted these answers for decades, and finally a man came on the scene who had answers to their questions, and they were like a famished group of people, and it was pretty much received in many parts of the church very, very enthusiastically, and I think led to a mini revival in the 1970s as pastors and other people realized that they could really believe their Bible.
But you probably also had some pushback even from Christians, because the notion of the gap theory, the 7 days was really a long, million year period or something. It was, I suspect, that it challenged a number of things that even Christians were saying at the time.
Oh, you bet. The things that you mentioned were definitely challenged. The gap theory, day-age theory, all of those were challenged. And there was pushback, without a doubt. And indeed, many of the seminaries are still pretty closed to embracing a flood geology model or a catastrophic model. There is no doubt about it, and it's only gotten worse since then. What was good at the time, and this was clearly of the Lord, is that the layman, the person in the pew, and many, many pastors were eager to get these answers. And because it was so new and novel, it was very easy to do events in churches. Large crowds came to them. You could sell almost every book you had that people brought. They were so hungry for them. And also, it was easy to set up debates, scientific debates on a lot of colleges and universities. It was a different era back then. Professors were just quite willing to debate until they realized that they got beat a lot of the time, and that we actually had the better scientific evidence.
And what you're doing, I work in the public policy world, and there's so many times that elected leaders and so forth, they have the right idea, but they just need the information, the background, and the research to be able to defend that they may not have personally. And of course, that's exactly what y'all have done. So my guest for this hour is Dr. Randy Guliuzza. He is president of the Institute for Creation Research, the Institute for Creation Research, where they also have the Discovery Center. And we're going to be talking more about how the Discovery Center and the Institute actually became such a major force out there, because it started small. It is not small any longer. I have been to the Institute here in Dallas, and this is an amazing thing. So, Randy, stay with us. We're going to be back in a few minutes, and we'll be able to, and let's talk about how you actually started the Institute, and it grew in Dallas, and then added the Discovery Center. Stay with us. We'll be back.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
The opening lines of a Wall Street Journal editorial observe, that didn't take long. We aren't even a half a year into the Biden presidency and already have an IRS scandal. ProPublica published the secret IRS files showing how some of the wealthiest Americans avoid income tax. It documents the years in which Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Michael Bloomberg paid no federal income taxes. It also provides an inside look at the financial lives of Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Mark Zuckerberg, and George Soros. What's the legal issue? Leaking such income information is a crime. Federal tax returns are confidential. Someone inside the IRS or associated with it leaked this information. The timing is not coincidental. Senator Ron Wyden opened his Financial Committee hearing a week ago, quoting from this IRS data dump. The Biden administration has proposed the largest tax increase as a share of the economy since 1968. An op-ed by Charles Cook said, "We can't trust the IRS. That is really the conclusion we should have. Each time this happens, there's an excuse. Last time it was the fact that Donald Trump declined to release his tax returns. That didn't justify breaking the law. This time it was the wealthy aren't paying their fair share." You may think that the people being exposed deserve it, but they deserve the same rights as other citizens. And if it is possible to obtain the tax records of influential people who have an army of lawyers, what chance do you have of keeping your financial records private? Here's my biggest concern with the latest IRS scandal. Only a few media outlets even considered releasing confidential tax information to be a scandal. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kirby's booklet, A Biblical View on Racism, go to viewpoints.info/racism. That's viewpoints.info/racism.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm Merrill Matthews, sitting in for Kirby Anderson today, and my guest is Dr. Randy Guliuzza. He is the president of the Institute for Creation Research Institute and the Discovery Center, and we're talking about how that organization got going. And so, Randy, it started small 50 years ago, but it is no small organization anymore. You go out and look at the Discovery Center. This is not a shoestring operation. How did you go from those small beginnings to what you have now?
Well, you're right. The Discovery Center is quite impressive, and if people come up here to northern Dallas area, they would really see a very, very nice structure, state-of-the-art in almost every way. But you're right. It didn't start this way. We actually started out small in San Diego, California, and then about 2006, somewhere in there, the decision was made to relocate the ministry from San Diego out here to Dallas. And that meant really a wholesale change in a way. All of the science faculty pretty much stayed in the San Diego area. We rehired new faculty, which are doing really cutting-edge research here, as good as we've ever done in the past. And then the ministry started to grow. And probably about 7 years ago, in earnest, we began the idea of putting together our own Discovery Center, in some ways in response to the Perot Museum, which was built here in Dallas, to offer an alternative explanation of the things that people are seeing and hearing at that museum, plus on National Geographic, Nova, and other things.
You know, and one of the things that you've done since then is you've started making information available to people in a form that they can get easily. I of course take Acts and Facts, and I'm going to encourage all of our listeners to sign up for that. You can go to pointofview.net. We have a link to the Institute for Creation Research Institute there, and you can go and find information about that. And you can sign up for Acts and Facts. It is a free publication. Do I get it every month, or is it like 10 times a month, or 12 months, or what?
It's every month, and it is a 24-page, 4-color magazine, mostly scientific articles, but aimed at the lay level. We have about 2 articles a month that are very technical for those who really like that, but the majority are aimed at the lay level. They can go to your website and get that, or they can go to our website at icr.org, and also sign up for it. And it has been free, absolutely free, since the inception of our ministry. We have donors who give to us so that we can make this information freely available to all who want to read it. And it actually goes out to about 120,000 readers in print form every month, and over another 100,000 online. So it has a wide readership.
I'm holding it up here now so that they can see this. If those viewing online can see a copy of the magazine, it is done very well. I take it as soon as I get it, I start going through some of the articles. As you point out, some of them are fairly technical. You're going to have a little background in science to be able to sort of get some of those. And there's formulas and other things in there that mathematics. I was a math major starting out in college, but some of those are technical, but they're still understandable. And you always have these bullet points at the beginning so that you sort of understand the drift, but the majority of them are things that are fairly that the average person can understand. And of course you have some questions and answers back there. Somebody asks a question and then somebody provides an answer to this. So it's timely, and it provides the in-depth research that you're not going to find in many places that tries to address some of these things. And so much as, the last hour we were working with the flood, but a lot of your articles are interestingly on the flood issue, because you're looking at rock structures, you're looking at sediments, you're looking at levels, you're looking at intermixing species and so forth in various levels. Talk a little bit about what you're doing there.
Yes, this is an area of really significant research, and nobody else in the world is doing it. We have staff geologists and an undergraduate student who are taking borehole logs, and so what those are. People are looking for coal or minerals or oil or things. They drill down and they do exploratory drilling, and they sample the rocks that are coming out. That's called well logging. And these are freely available, but nobody has taken the time to catalog all of these. And we have pulled together literally thousands of them, close to 3,000 of these from all over the world, every continent, and we are entering the data. We have a large computer that can handle this. And we're putting together maps. And these maps actually show the various stages of the flood. As the floodwaters covered the entire planet, and as they rose and then as they receded, they left a rock record. And that record is contained in these borehole logs. And when you compile all that data together, you can actually see the timing of the flood covering each and every one of these continents. The take-home message is this, for anybody who's listening, maybe skeptical out there. We can document the same layers on every continent, some of the same layers on every continent in the same sequence. North America spreading across Greenland into Europe, across Asia, Africa, Middle East, Australia, Antarctica. We can document the same layers. They don't cover the entire world, but some of these are on every continent of the world in the exact same sequence. And the only reasonable geological explanation for that is a worldwide flood.
And you argue in the magazine, and generally speaking, that the flood, the waters were so powerful, things that were happening with the earth and the volcanoes and so forth were so powerful that it created things that some scientists, the evolutionists now, would look at this and say, well, that just took millions and millions of years to create that tunnel or that valley or something of that nature. And you look at it from a different stance.
Oh, you bet. When you look at the layers that I mentioned that are covering all of the continents, for one, what explanation do you have that you have layers that are covering every continent in the world in the same sequence. That has to be a worldwide cause to bring about that effect. The layers are also very flat. In other words, there's a knife-edge contact between the layers showing no time or no processes of erosion. The layers trap literally billions and billions of fossils in them on top of that, and they are quite extensive. The only process that is going to put down flat, extensive layers with a knife-edge contact, not only just trapping billions of fossils, but actually trapping animal tracks between the layers, raindrops, and insect tracks between them, showing that there was no time between the deposition of these layers, is a worldwide flood. And another area of research is we're able to integrate now the fossil record with these layers. Dr. Jeff Tompkins is doing that in conjunction with Dr. Clary, showing that these fossils were trapped in ecological zones, and it makes a lot of scientific sense. And as far as I know, there is not a serious secular rebuttal to this information out there.
You know, it's interesting because you talk about the fossil record and occasionally the DNA that's still available in there, and then your scientists will point out, well, there's still some DNA in this fossil, and yet we're told that the DNA cannot last millions and millions of years, and yet the same people who say this is millions and millions of years old would have to say they don't know how the DNA manages to survive that time, I guess.
Yes, you're right. They actually engage in kind of circular reasoning. Well, we know the fossil is millions of years old, therefore there has to be a mechanism to preserve DNA or other soft tissues on that, even though all research indicates that is actually done on these tissues that they will not last 50 million years or longer. And it's not just DNA, it's collagen and other proteins that are being found, which nobody expected to find. And not only, it's not being found in just a few fossils, it's being found in many fossils. And I'm going to predict that as we continue to look for these soft tissues in the fossils, we're going to continue to find them. I'm also going to predict that as we continue to do studies on breakdown rates of these proteins and other tissues, that they are not going to confirm and that they would last millions of years. You're right. This is a very strong evidence that these animals were buried recently in Noah's flood.
My guest for this hour, Dr. Randy Guliuzza. He is president of the Institute for Creation Research and the Discovery Center. When we come back, Randy, let's go and talk a little bit about what's happening at the Discovery Center and what's the options people have, what they can learn, and so forth there. If you want to find out more about the Institute for Creation Research, the Creation Research, you can go to pointofview.net or you can go to their website. And I would encourage you to go there, look at some of the resource materials that are available, subscribe to Acts and Facts, and you'll get a hard copy of that every month in the mail. And that's one of the most important resources that they make available to the public, and it is free of charge. So, Randy, when we come back, let's talk about the Discovery Center and what you're doing there, some of the lectures that are going on, and what's happening now that that's opening up. So stay with us, 1-800-351-1212, 1-800-351-1212. If you have a question for Dr. Randy Guliuzza, we'll be back in just a minute.
You can make a difference. Yes, we face big tech censorship, government overreach, biblical illiteracy, and many other ills. And while there's no single action to overcome them, no real-life Captain America to come to our rescue, it's a fact that everyday Americans, like you, are the key to turning things around. The biggest thing you have is that you care, and all you need is the encouragement and the will to stand up for what's right. Your gift of Point of View enables us to reach more people with the information and free resources they need to join you in making a real difference in our homes, at work, in our churches, and our communities. Some of our friends have put $55,000 on the table as a matching challenge. You give, they will match it. Make a difference today by visiting pointofview.net/difference or call 1-800-347-5151. Double your impact today. Make a difference by taking this first step. Pointofview.net/difference. and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, your guest host for Point of View.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm Merrill Matthews, sitting in for Kirby Anderson today. And on the phone with me is Dr. Randy Guliuzza. He is president of the Institute for Creation Research. And we're talking about the Institute and what's going on. Randy, before we turn to the Discovery Center, let's take a call from Jeff in Missouri. Jeff, you're on the air.
Hey, guys. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
The miracles of electrons. Hey, I just wanted to really just, I couldn't even offer all of the accolades, but I was a young man in 1974, 1975, probably an 18 or 19-year-old kid at the University of Kansas, and pre-med. I was in an immunology research lab, and I just come to know the Lord at the end of high school, and trying to understand how the biblical worldview interfaced with the science that I was learning. And, my professor in the immunology lab, it was, I wasn't going to get any answers. So basically, I was absolutely blown away, life-changing, when Doctors Gish and Morris came to KU. They debated, it was just those two guys, they debated with the professors at KU in, I think there was geology and archaeology, paleontology. I mean, there was like 6 KU professors there debating Doctors Morris and Gish. And, it was run like a formal debate. And, the KU professors would stand up and, present for quite a while. And Dr. Morris or Gish would just get up and say something very profound, very thoughtful, very confidently, but very eye-opening for me. For example, one of the things I'll never forget, I didn't understand this carbon-14 dating, and I think it was Dr. Gish. I don't remember. It's been so long ago. But, they were formally trained, had access to all the equipment. But he said, well, I took my banana from lunch and did the carbon-14 dating on it. And I don't remember how many millions of years it came up. So what are we measuring? Are we measuring the carbon that was in the soil, the carbon that was in the banana, the tree that decomposed 100 years before that, et cetera? And then he said, like an old truck out in the pasture, the rate of oxidation, rust, and deterioration is not linear. It's got to get through the paint first, and then once the paint's gone, the oxidation and rust occurs logarithmically. So, he just gave some incredibly profound thoughts, and I got involved in the Navigator Bible Study at KU, and then in the Christian Medical Society in medical school. And it was really that debate that set me on a course of confidence with all of the science that I was being inundated with, and how that was absolutely consistent with the biblical worldview.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Let's get a comment from Dr. Guliuzza. Dr. Guliuzza?
Well, Jeff, first, thanks for calling in, and thank you for that very encouraging little mini testimony there. I really wish I had $1 for everyone I heard that was very, very much like yours, and mine is actually similar to yours as well. But you used a couple phrases in it which seem to apply to so many from that era that you had, when you said it was life-changing, and you said it gave you confidence. And I think that's what really the ministry was back then in many ways, to students and to professors who were trapped in the secular worldview, didn't really see their way through the forest of the trees on that. And then Drs. Gish and Morris came in, and as you said, very, very logically, level-headed, fully scientific, gave answers that people were just hungry for. And it really was life-changing. And people like you became the lifeblood for the creation science movement, and helping ministries like ours advance, and the sister ministries that are out there today. So I'm so thankful that it did change your life. I'm thankful that you plugged in. And thank you so much for calling in. It's very encouraging.
Thank you, Jeff. And if I remember right, Dr. Gish, we didn't mention him earlier, but they used to use the term from fish to gish. And that was sort of his, as I understand, his thinking of this is how the evolution is supposed to go, from the fish to Dr. Gish. But now tell us a little bit about the Discovery Center. What's happening there now?
Well, this is a state-of-the-art facility here. It's in northern Dallas on Royal Lane, 1830 Royal Lane, and you can find the information about it at icr.org. I can't tell you all the things that are there, or will ruin all the surprise for coming, but we have one of the few planetariums in the area. We have 3 shows that people can view, 2 dealing, obviously, with astronomy and the stars and the solar system and even the galaxy, and one of them dealing with our incredible oceans. This is just like any planetarium show. They're really, really immersive, and they're very exciting to see. We have another theater that is called the Ice Age Theater, and it will instruct our guests about what happened during the Ice Age, the one ice age that followed the Great Flood, and how it explains so much of our flora and fauna today and some of the geological features that we see not only in our country but around the world. We have other state-of-the-art, high-tech exhibits that, if I tell you about them, it'll ruin the surprise because some of them you actually have to come up on and see. But in all of these, there are touch screens, which a person can touch and drill down and go from one area to another and get information, filling you in, scientific information about what is happening in each of the rooms during the display. You get a chance to go through a little mini portion of what we envision Noah's Ark might have looked like with some of the animals on board on all of that. We have probably the world's best, and I mean world's best, diorama of Grand Canyon. It is just incredible and something to see. There is something for all ages. There is a lot of scientific content. It is faithful to the biblical record in every way. And since obviously we're closed down for COVID, we have spent a lot of time in greatly improving our exhibits and adding some for the younger kids as well.
1-800-351-1212, 1-800-351-1212 if you have a question or comment for Dr. Guliuzza. So you mentioned the planetarium, and that, of course, we're talking about the stars and other planets and so forth. So I come and I say, all right, I can see where you're talking about creation here, but you're talking about a fairly short timeline. And when I hear the astronomers talking, they're saying they see the stars separating, galaxies separating. They do the assessment of that, and you couldn't have a universe that big with that much separating that far in just a few thousand years. How do you answer that?
Wow. We get that question a lot, and it's actually, there is an answer to it, and there's a very good answer to it. It's somewhat of a complicated answer, but at the very basic, it deals with the fact that time is tied to the speed of light. And there are places that we know surrounding black holes and others like that where light is not moving. Mm-hmm. And therefore, theoretically, time is standing still in those areas. And consistent with general relativity, particularly Dr. Russ Humphreys and Larry Vardaman have put together an explanation. It's on our website at icr.org. A series of articles called In No Time at All explains how the Lord could have stretched out the universe at pretty much the same rate at which time is not moving in these black holes at the event horizon, causing time to stand still in the moment that he had quit stretching out the universe. In other words, taking the tension off that. Light and time began to move, therefore placing galaxies that are very, very far away from us, but in no time at all. So that is a great series of articles in no time at all at icr.org. Look for the article by Dr. Larry Vardaman with Russ Humphreys.
A related question: if the universe is so big and everything is done by chance and evolution, why wouldn't you think that there are? Would you think that there are species, creatures, and things on other planets? Because if you given enough time, given enough opportunities, maybe there's something else going out there.
Yes, that's really a fairy tale story. That time is like some substitute creator, and that nature itself is like some substitute God, and given enough time that anything is possible. Really, that is very, very naive, and that's what's being taught at all the major universities. But anybody who really thinks about it knows that that is a really scientifically inadequate explanation. What we do know about real life is, one, life only comes from life. Zero exceptions, none. No observable exceptions to that rule. Two, life is composed of organisms that can reproduce, adapt, multiply.
Dr. Guliuzza, let me get you to hold at number 2, and we'll come back to that when we return from this break. Stay with us, and we'll be back.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And we're back in our final segment with Dr. Randy Guliuzza, president of the Institute for Creation Research Institute. I keep adding the institute at the end because I typically call it the Creation Research Institute. Dr. Guliuzza, you were on number 2. Continue on if you would.
Well, yes, sorry to run long into your segment there.
No, that's fine.
People give you this idea that you already put out, that given enough time that maybe life is just going to evolve from non-life. And as I mentioned in point number 1, that there's no exceptions to the fact that life only comes from life. And that should be a showstopper right there in and of itself for evolutionary thinking. But number 2, and that is that when you listen to shows like Nova and National Geographic, and even what you get in your textbooks and from your teachers in school, they make life sound so simple. In fact, I wrote an article where I highlighted in dozens of evolutionary technical papers where they use the word simple. But life is anything but simple. And just to get the minimum things that living creatures do, which is to grow and adapt, multiply, and metabolize things, you have systems which are engineered in such a way that they are phenomenally complex. And they have many interrelated parts within each and every one of those systems, like the reproductive system and metabolic systems. And those systems have to function in order for the other systems to work. In other words, you end up with a huge chicken and egg problem for each system and for the entire organism. And the only reasonable explanation, not from a faith standpoint alone, but from a scientific standpoint, is that these creatures were created fully functional with all of their systems in place right from the very beginning. And life is anything but simple. It is phenomenally, mind-bogglingly complex, which in many ways just gives incredible glory to the Lord Jesus Christ who made it all.
We've talked a bit about the incredible resource you have there, and people can go online and find a good bit of information there. And one of the things you have is you have the difference between principles of scientific creationism, and principles of biblical creationism. Is there a difference?
Oh yes, there is a difference. In many ways, they complement each other, but biblical creation is the revelation that you would only find within the Bible. In many things, we can't tell just by looking at nature certain information that we find only in the Bible on that, such as the exact time and the exact dates. I shouldn't say exact, but the very, very close to the time and dates of creation. You can't just go out and look and get those timing and those dates, or even the timing and date of the flood in and of itself, just by looking at the rocks. You can tell that they were probably placed by a flood. You can tell that they were recent. You can look at the soft tissue, which you've discussed, and determine that they're recent. But you can't determine that just by looking at it, and that would be scientific creation. Biblical creation gives us a much richer understanding of telling us, one, who the Creator is, and that is the Lord Jesus Christ, who made all things and upholds them and sustains them and created life itself. And it tells us about when, and it tells us that Adam and Eve were specifically created and that they were the first human beings. So biblical creation is based on special revelation that we would find strictly in the Bible.
So can I be a Christian, a scientific creationist without being a biblical creationist?
Yes, there are people who are both. In fact, I thought you were going to ask the question, can you be a Christian? and hold the different views. Of course, I was. I have to say my testimony was one that I became a Christian from turning to the Lord Jesus Christ and repenting of my sin, and yet I still believed in evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody had taught me any better. So I came to Christ still believing in evolution, and it was actually picking up acts and facts in a library at Moody Bible Institute that totally changed my life, just like we heard from Jeff a little bit ago. So, yes, you can hold to one and not the other, but to be consistent, that is, to take the Bible as the clearly revealed Word of God, where anybody can pick it up, read it for themselves, and understand it, you would hold to the principles that we have on our website as biblical creation. And that is the that is the position that we take, that the Bible is clear. You don't have to have holy men tell you what it says. You don't have to have science men tell you. The average person can pick it up, clearly read it, and clearly understand it for themselves.
I believe, if I remember correctly, that C.S. Lewis held to a sort of an evolution position, even though he was, a very strong Christian. But I believe he died in the 1960s. Is it fair to say it would be easier to sort of accept that if you were living, if your lifespan was early 20th century as opposed to later 20th century after Dr. Morris and Dr. Gish had started their efforts?
Yes, it is. It would be much easier. There are so many more answers to people's questions available today at ICR.org, our sister ministries, that if you have questions with some research and looking, you can actually get answers to them. Clearly, in the 1950s, 40s, 50s, that information was not available to people, which is now really at their fingertips. So in some ways, people are more accountable today than they were 80 years ago, and they have less of an excuse for the ignorance that they had a long time ago.
Take about a minute to tell me, if I want to come to the Discovery Center, see things, learn things, what do I need to do, and what are my options out there? What can I come see?
Well, the best thing to do to come see it is go to our webpage, ICR.org. There'll be a tab on Discovery Center, and you open that up, because the best way to get your tickets is to purchase them online. In order to avoid big crowds all crushing together and ending up in bottlenecks, we actually have times that you can sign up for your tickets, and so we have a steady flow throughout the day, and you can purchase your tickets for the museum or for the planetarium online. And the best way to do that is to go to ICR.org, and they will have the times that are available for you to come and to sign up for them. So ICR.org is your gateway to the Discovery Center. It's your gateway to a wealth of information on our webpage. It's your gateway to learning about the Institute for Creation Research altogether.
And when schools come back in, do you sponsor children coming in school groups?
Oh, you better believe it. In fact, in many ways, the kids throughout the middle part of the day are our bread and butter. We have Christian schools coming by the dozens, and hundreds of these students come to the Discovery Center, and it is a real blessing to each and every one of them. That's a great question.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Doctor.
Oh, well, thank you so much for the interview, and thank you for interviewing our scientists previously. We're very, very thankful for it, and the Lord's good blessing on you and your radio program, Merrill.
Thank you. Our guest for this hour has been Dr. Randy Guliuzza of the Institute for Creation Research. And, of course, all the things that are going on there, go to pointofview.net. We have a lot of material there that you can find and go to the Institute for Creation Research. And then there's going to be a number of things there for you to do. There will be options for you. And so I'd encourage you to do that. I'd also encourage you to sign up for Acts and Facts and get this in the mail. It's a great publication, and it is just literally filled with good stuff. Kirby's out again tomorrow, and I am back, and we're going to be talking about the role of Christian in politics in the first hour. And in the second hour, Joel C. Rosenberg has got a new book out, Enemies and Allies. This is not one of his fiction books. This is talking about, he's an expert on what's happening in the Middle East. He lives in Israel now, and he's done a number of interviews, and he's going to bring that information to what's happening in the Middle East, and he's very excited about some of the changes that are going on. So thank you for joining us on Point of View. I'm Merrill Matthews, and I'll be back tomorrow.
We live in a digital generation. Point of View is reaching this often overly plugged-in generation with truth. You can keep up with us 24 hours a day using your phone, your tablet, your laptop, or your desktop. Search for the Point of View radio talk show on Facebook, where you can keep up with today's issues, learn about current and upcoming guests by liking us on Facebook. Also, follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @PointOfViewRTS. That stands for Point of View Radio Talk Show. Learn, interact, Make a difference with Point of View using new media. And here's one way you can make a big difference. Help us increase our reach by spreading the word among your friends. Share a Facebook post. Tag us in a tweet. With enough joining us to plant seeds, we'll see a tremendous harvest. Come on, it only takes a minute. Search for Point of View Radio Talk Show on Facebook, at Point of View RTS on Twitter, and subscribe to the Point of View Radio Talk Show channel on YouTube. Learn, interact, share. The Point of View Radio Talk Show. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.